We're just about done exploring here. Just got a little poking around to do. Mostly to fill the map in, but you never know. There could be purple secrets from here and there. But yeah, our big priority is go back down, try to ruin somebody's life so we can open a door. You know, quest stuff. Yay. Maybe I can do like a nuanced, tricky thing that leads to a different outcome, but probably not. Be kind of a cheap thing to do, to have it just not be the big threat it's supposed to be. It would really undercut the entire thing, wouldn't it? Run faster. Yeah. Grab that bush. Oh, that's it. Alas, we have been thorough. Go, 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 go. I believe in you. Get that cardio going. Yeah. All semblance of a formation that makes sense are out the window. No, the ranged people are in the back, at least. Definitely would prefer Edo to be in the front when they're in single file. But that's not really how the AI pathing works. It just kind of goes and gives it a good old attempt. Admittedly, I don't know why I said admittedly, we're potentially on our way back from the DLC soon. If we're going to solve the Durgan's battery thing. The inside of Durgan's battery could be a whole thing.
Right?
Didn't think I'd miss this place. Had that much right. Let's review our actual approach here. Right. They could end up like me or Mayorwald. We're supposed to use the device that I handed her, I believe. Talk to Renengild about the problem. Keep an eye on the Devil of Caroc. The Devil of Caroc asked to travel with me after I mentioned that I'm a watcher, and that I'm returning to the village where she was captured. I'm not sure what she's after, but I'll be sure to keep a close watch on her. I'll have to see how that goes. It's all the way down here as a task, isn't it? There it is, right? Search the building at night for drugs. I want to go after that guy. Seems kind of spiteful and pointless, though. I'm not sure how much I care about that. We'll see.
I take it you've met Galvino.
Yeah. Renengild glances at the Devil of Caroc, her eyes narrowing. No further conversation, huh? You just glance at her soul and see what happens. I would guess that one of these two main characters is the most likely people to be the people. Renengild would be interesting, because if she's the one that has the right soul, then she might... She's also the one that's maybe most likely in the entire town to sacrifice herself for the sake of the town. It's her mission after all, so... Might be one of the more justifiable outcomes, at least. Your awareness settles beneath Renengild's skin. You feel yourself looking through her eyes upon a time-faded memory. You're standing in the inn. The room is stifling, but it's the body heat of so many furious villagers, not the neglected fire pit, that's drawn sweat from your pores. Your husband waits by the door, but as far as he can get... About as far as he can get from the assembly. He holds Uldric, whose cheeks are bright as he watches the adults bicker with wide, fearful eyes. You'd never realized how badly your neighbors stink, but something rank and repulsive rises from them as they pack together in this room.
How much did the old snake pay you, Sina Hiod?
It's grinned, the head fisherman, jabbing a furious finger toward the back of the room. Sinahod, your erstwhile mare, squirms at the corner, pinned by the accusing stares of the entire village. Oh, those eyes. They're cruel, porcine eyes. And they're watching Sinahod with the dumb gluttony of hogs staring at fodder. The only sight that turns your stomach more is Sinahod himself, trying to wriggle free of his own lies. I didn't really grasp the pronunciation the guy did a second ago. I didn't latch onto it as much as I could have. So, but like my interpretation is Sinhood, as in like the state one would carry if they had sinned. Sinhood. Huh.
Maestro Galvino and I came to an agreement. It was for the good of Stalwart. I thought...
You thought you'd let a killer walk among us?
A woman in the middle of the crowd waves her fist. Cries of fierce agreement rise from the others. What began as a collective grumbling is swelling and congealing like storm clouds. You look back at your husband. He's whispering to Uldric, but when you catch his eye, he directs a silent supplication to you.
Let's go.
A wet smack draws your attention back to the other end of the room. Someone's thrown a potato, and Sinhood cringes and rubs his jaw. You want to shout at them, all for this nonsense and waste, but you know this is about to get worse. Stalwart will have blood, and Galvino and his horror had the sense to flee already. You turn again, and your husband is beckoning you with swift, chopping motions, but what stops your breath is Uldric. His little eyes are fixed on the churning mob, and you knew ever since you started hearing about those hideous purges that he'd seen something like this one day. But did it have to be so soon? It's what drove the devil woman to madness, and now his little eyes have gotten big enough to swallow the whole scene, and now he's seeing you as part of it. You want to leave now, but if you do, this is what your boy will remember. Cowardice and madness. About people. About Stalwart. About you. The people around you jostle and bark in their rage. They're dangerous animals, but animals nonetheless. They just need to be led. So you push your way to the end of the room, where Sinhood trembles in a puddle of his own piss.
Enough.
Your voice boils up from your throat. The others fall silent, watching you. They listen, dumbly trusting, as you turn Sinhood's death sentence into an exile. No one contradicts you when you explain that he is going to march out of this village alone and into whatever miserable hamlet will have him. They silently agree when you explain that their hands are too clean for the likes of him. But there's something else forming behind their eyes. A kernel of trust and dependence. You feel it curdling around you, encasing you like a pearl does sand. You only want to spare Sinhood's life, not volunteer for his job. But you see so much fear simmering just beneath their expressions. Fear at godmen marching through the mountains, at dear woodens and their purges, at dying the slow and lonely death of a ghost town. And you see their grateful reassurance mirrored in Uldric's expression. Perhaps this place is hopeless, but you realize that you can't leave it any more than you could leave your body. The only person who isn't looking at you is your husband. He's shaking his head, his eyes on the door. You retreat from Renengild's memory. Vivid though it is, it has nothing to do with Durgan's battery. You got the look of someone with his teeth around a secret. Her cold fingers are locked around your arm. Her black eyes search you.
I wouldn't call it a secret. It's more like a mysterious thing he doesn't like to talk about.
What's on your mind?
And none of that's going to come up again. No, we don't have no discussion to be had about that.
Something else you need?
Right, because that was the devil's first time encountering my gift moment. He's the next person that might be the one that is connected to the Durgan's battery. In particular, it has the kind of ironic outcome of him being, if he's the only hope, the surprise comes from the fact that he was the one that most wanted to just give up on this place and move on. You reach for Uldric's essence and find yourself staring at a fence post lying in a filthy slush of frozen mud. Snow gathers around your legs and trickles into your boots. A wind nips at you even through layers of furs. You hold a wood chisel in one numb hand and a mallet in the other. Kneeling over the fence post, you get to work. Hour after hour, you hammer away, feeling the tools grow heavy in your grip as your breath fogs your vision. You want to do better work than this. You can do better work than this. But no one's building new houses in Stalwart. The last table you crafted was put into the fishery, and pike entrails now trace the fine dovetail joints you so lovingly carved. Now, you mend the stockade, because that's what's needed. The chisel slips, skidding alongside your hand. You gasp, but you hold up your hand and see, much to your relief, all 5 fingers wiggling back at you. You need to get out of this town. You pull back from Uldric's soul. He's still staring into the fire, seeming lost in his own memories too.
Yeah.
Why? See, I suddenly have this ability to check souls.
Right here.
They do anything? Anyway, so I have 100 more use per encounter. So does it regenerate when I have an encounter that happens? I didn't see anything happen when I used it.
Right here.
I'm confused about the part where I'm reaching in and experiencing people's memories, because those memories are of their current life. I thought the point was I was supposed to experience their past lives. And those past lives are what I'm trying to awaken so I can then find out the password to Durgan's battery. If they're... I'm trying to think about a few different things here. What was the timeline again for how long ago Durgan's battery was sealed? Because it'd have to be a younger person, right? Was it this lifetime or not? But I believe I was supposed to be finding what kind of memories their past lives have to find out whether or not they're Durgan's battery related, and then I could inspect or potentially awaken that memory. But I'm reaching to these people and they both just gave memories of their current lives, which is completely counterproductive. It doesn't even serve to rule them out as potential people, because they're bad. I only looked at their current life, which is useless feedback.
Didn't think there was anything more than lice and hoarfrost to these folk, but you had a look back there. What do you find when you're rooting around like that?
First, tell me the real reason you wanted to follow me to Stalwart.
Mayhap I'm looking for someone. Woodcutter by the name of Harmka.
This doesn't have anything to do with Cold Morn, does it?
It sure does.
Her fingers tighten into fists, the metal squealing and rattling.
He was one of them. The mob that destroyed Cold Morn. I tracked him to Stalwart years ago, but got caught before I could finish my business.
Dark, iridescent whirls appear and fade on her chestplate. Heat ripples from her metal carapace. You want me to help you murder someone?
Oh, don't go all soft on me. He's had it coming.
A note of cold fury buzzes within her.
This man, Harmka. I saw him outside my house the night it burned, staring into the flames the way I seen you stare into souls.
Her fists clench and loosen in a series of rapid random movements.
I knew it were a fool's errand trying to hunt down every man and woman that carried a torch into Cold Morn. But
She twists her head from side to side and holds up a hand. Delicately engraved palm, empty but grasping at something.
If I knew I got the one responsible for my kin and my hearth, I could rest easy.
How can you be so sure about this Harmka fellow?
I took a good long look that night. Ours was a little place with a yellow door right on the edge of town. He was there.
He nods slowly.
Besides, I asked around when I first got to Stalwart. Townsfolk said that all the woodcutters in town took part in the purge. Point of pride for them.
A small plume of heat rises from a seam in her skull. What does this have to do with me?
I told you he was part of the mob. I spotted him watching my house when it burned. But when we find him, I want to know if he's the one responsible for my home, my parents, and my brothers and sister.
One of her thumbs rubs absently at the scratch on her hand.
I never thought I'd have the chance to know for sure. But you could look into his soul and find out. You being a watcher and all.
I'll do what I can.
Mighty fine of you. Mighty fine indeed.
She nods again, her head bobbing along to a drowsy cadence.
Don't know where he dallies these days, but someone in Stalwart could tell us. People from little villages, they always know.
Huh. What is she talking about? My character was like, this is about the cold of Morn or whatever, and I'm like, Maybe I lost track of something, because I talked to Galvino for like a half an hour straight. Like, it was a lot of dialogue. But I don't think I missed this. But I could be wrong. Maybe I just already forgot something because he talked for so long. But I don't remember this coming up. It sounds like this is the motivation for why the Devil of Caroc is such a murderer that killed so many people and burned down their houses. Because she was known for causing a bunch of fires, right? And killing a bunch of people. And then the first place where she where she killed a bunch of people was Caroc, and that's where the name stuck, even though she did it a bunch of other places. I remember that specific dialogue. But I don't remember ever getting an explanation for her incentive, or that she's on a revenge mission for her own house being burned down in a purge, which I'm not even sure if I know what a purge is, but the last conversation we had back there also mentioned a purge. When I was inspecting the mayor's thoughts, she was thinking about the purge, and has it time already? Now we have this thing about the purge that apparently the woodcutters are always taking part in, and I'm like, I don't know what the Cold of Morn or the purge are. I don't think I've heard of either of these things before. Maybe they were expecting me to have already stopped and exhausted all of her dialogue that you can do at any time before I made it back to Stalwart, but that's really iffy because you get back to Stalwart like instantly, because I get her in the wilderness outside of Stalwart, and you could spend hours before you get around to talking to somebody and doing their personal dialogue, especially when you're, because it comes up at any time. But also I just got through like a mountain of dialogue that involved her, so I don't think the players would necessarily immediately go into her dialogue too. But maybe now I'll go back and find that information now, I guess. Galvino said you murdered several people before he transferred you.
Effigy's eyes, that man loved to talk.
Her eyes rolled in her sockets. Did you really do it?
Yeah.
She continues to watch you, waiting. Do you regret it?
You want to hear me say yes, don't you?
She tilts her head on its axis, searching you with its ink-black eyes.
You'd have me go on about how I thought long and hard on my crimes, how I'd spend my own essence if it would quicken the men and women I killed.
She's silent for several long seconds, before she swivels her head away. Tell me why you killed those people.
If it's sane and logical reasoning you're wanting, you're gonna be disappointed. Ain't no sense in any of it.
Something drove you to kill those people. It obviously matters. A soft hissing noise comes from the bronze golem. You recognize it as a sigh.
Mayhap you've heard of Cold Morn. Was a quiet, forgettable patch of the woods, till a pack of rabid clodhoppers set it afire.
Okay, yeah, so the dialogue's just broken. The dialogue just does not trigger in an order that makes sense, and she just starts talking about stuff that she's never talked to you about because they didn't organize it correctly. Gotcha. That's pretty clear now. It's like, oh wow, the introduction to the subject we've been talking about for like the last 10 minutes. Gotcha. The fingers of one hand twitch and click against one another in a pair of sudden spastic motions.
That was the start of the purges. Dear Woodens killing their own.
What exactly happened to Cold Morn? A sudden burst of heat flares from her seams as her essence surges and boils.
A farmer on the other side of the mountains woke up one day with his head all aflame and took it for the gibbering speech of his god. And so did a few thousand of his countrymen. So when he tired of Vorlus fields and marched west, a horde of armed Hicks followed.
You're talking about Wadwood and the Saints' War.
Bunch of fool nonsense is what I'm talking about. But others have called it the same. If you know that much, then you've heard of Cold Morn. Ours was the village that let a few thousand of Widewind's troops pass through.
You were from Cold Morn? When I heard what happened out there after the war, I couldn't believe my ears.
Fine line between couldn't and wouldn't.
I guess you didn't have much choice.
Try telling a few hundred crazed dear Woodens. We got news of the raid Sarens coming through the mountains. Begged the Duke for help, we did.
She sweeps one bronze palm across another, metal screeching.
Didn't send us so much as a bare-ass novitiate. They went to towns with full coffers and lofty connections.
She crosses her arms over her plated chest.
So we let Widewind soldiers pass. Left him for the Duke to wrangle on his own terms.
You hear a soft clank as she flicks her wrist. The Cold Morn was purged in retaliation.
Was after the Godhammer made a fine grit out of Widewind, when Deerwoodens were running on rage and looking for something to burn.
You catch glimmers and glints as at her seams as razor-thin wires pull tight within her body.
They came at dark, hundreds of folk. Every one of them mourning someone lost in the war.
A dried chuckle ticks in her throat.
Must have decided it was our duty to escort their dead back to the wheel. They didn't light their torches till they had us surrounded. Time we saw them, there was a ring of fire closing around us.
She pauses, and a mechanism in the back of her skull clicks dully.
I woke. Ran to the window. Whole village were a maze of flames. Couldn't see nothing for the smoke. And the screams.
Her thumb spasms to a strange rhythmic beat.
Most ran for the streets. Got caught by the mob. Others hid, let their houses burn down around them.
What did you do to survive?
Ran, fought, hid, burned. Same as my neighbors and family. Just luckier.
I'm sorry. That's terrible.
You're the only person in the Deerwood who thinks so. Me, I'm surprised the Duke didn't make our massacre a festival day.
But what does that have to do with your crimes?
Hunting down the men and women what took part. Thought that much was clear.
But you only killed people who attacked Cold Morn, right?
Sure.
Her voice is flat and as expressionless as her face.
You want me to tell you straight? I found the men and women what destroyed my village, and I burned their houses down around them. Sometimes they was alone, and sometimes they wasn't.
He shrugs. What exactly did you hope to accomplish?
It were a mob that destroyed our village, but it was just one man that burned my family's house. Kept hoping I'd get to him as I was working my way through the rest of those maggots. No matter now, I suppose.
A sigh rattles out of her bronze skull, but her essence whips and twitches as restless as a cat's tail. Well, we got context for her being a mass murderer, and that it's motivated, but it's also still monstrous. But it's, I don't know, kind of blow for blow in a world full of fucked up actions. But she is killing other people too. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna kill you and all the innocent people around you for the same reasons that you killed all the innocent people around an idea the first time around. You and Galvino had an unusual relationship.
Only kind I have with someone like him. Or me.
She crosses her arms. You resent him.
No other way to feel about the man who flayed my living soul.
Metal squeals as she shifts her folded arms. He claims he made you.
He'd spread butter on bread and claim he made something. Never been accused of modesty, that man.
Her eyes roll wildly.
He managed to stuff my soul into this heap of bronze, true enough. Maybe that makes him a genius. Also makes him a son of a bitch.
She drums her fingers along one scratched bicep. At this point, I almost want a tally of how many times her eyes roll when I talk to her. How long have you two known each other?
Around about 13 years. Too long, you ask me.
Did you ever consider murdering him?
Every day. Just kept putting it off. It's not like either of us was going anywhere.
Question is whether she's joking or not, because she is a mass murderer. But she might be joking, because maybe she isn't a big fan of randomly murdering people that haven't wronged her. Because that's the explanation behind all of her campaign beforehand. And one way or another, he's not that. But he did take her out of her body. What exactly did you do for him? She regards you for several seconds. She shrugs.
Looked after his tools, cleaned the workshop, swung the sledgehammer. Oh, and snatched up travelers for his soul tinkering.
Those other golems, you mean?
But don't you worry. They were all bad folk.
That's terrible.
Maybe so, but I got a feeling you didn't bring me along for my charming personality. Yeah, I've had enough of them too.
About Durgan's battery.
Just because I made a metal don't mean I got any special fondness for smiths and forges.
She flicks the bronze of her forearm, producing a dissonant ring. Do you know anything about it?
No more than what Galvino already told you.
Any thoughts on which villagers I should check?
Long as we get to Harmka, we can search whoever you please. Let me know if you need someone in a chinlock.
Do you remember any of the other expeditions that came to Galvino?
Nothing specific. Everyone looks about the same when they got their fingers up their noses.
She pauses thoughtfully. Then her head snaps forward in a tiny, quick moment of realization.
Only the last group, one before you. There was something different about them.
Three of her fingers clench in spasm.
Couldn't put my finger on it, but they was dangerous. Almost felt the hair on the back of my neck.
She runs her hand along the smooth, segmented bronze of her neck.
I ain't felt that way about anyone else walking through Galvino's door, that's for sure. Murder, tracking, and the best materials for kindling. Those are more my area of expertise.
What was your life like before the Saints' War?
There weren't much to say about it. By my reckoning, that means it was pretty good.
She nods thoughtfully.
Ma was a trapper, taught me to set snares and dress game. Dad was a tinker. I never had his patience, but it were fun to watch him work. My brothers and sister, they was good folk too. Part of me's glad they ain't here to see me now.
Her face is as blank as ever, but her essence ebbs and writhes. She turns away. That's all. Now we have a whole lot more context. Harmke. I met Harmke before. That's not the guy from the fishery. It's Thirsk's house.
Yeah.
Ultimately, one thing we gotta do is just kind of poke around. Let's talk to the people. Oh, right, this quest. Metzlov, the Sisterhood of the Slaked Skull, is dead. He grins. Kinda ironic, isn't it? She went around killing people for Barath, and in the end, that's what... Ah, never mind. Just take the bounty. He passes you a bag that rattles with coin. Bunch of money, bunch of experience, these are all good things. I've heard some new reports of dangerous folk about. Perhaps you'd be interested in going after them, too. I'm interested in the new bounties you mentioned. That'd be the Disciples of the True Flame, and the Old Dunrid Hunting Lodge. He shakes his head. Those others you handled are lambs by comparison. Tell me more about the Disciples of the True Flame. He scratches the back of his neck. I didn't know what to make of this one, but word is it's a group of dragon cultists. He holds up his hands. I know it sounds bizarre. I didn't believe it myself until I heard they'd torched an outpost near the north of Maiden Falls for clearing a nest of worms, they said. Last I heard, they'd made camp near Longwatch Falls. They shouldn't be hard to spot. What's the old Dunrid Hunting Lodge? He shakes his head. Darrens with too much time and money. They travel around hunting monsters for sport. But they leave a mess of wrecked property and dead bodies, kith, I mean, in their wake. They've been charged with murder and general mischief in Defiance Bay, New Homar, and a dozen other towns in between. Someone saw them hunting in the Russet Wood, so you might look for them there. Two thoughts. One is just that, like, if you have me do a series of bounties and then I finish them and you're like, here's new bounties, I'm thinking those are probably harder bounties, which is a little rough because they were already hard the first time around. Probably even higher level. But also, this is a DLC that's segmented into part 1 and part 2. So I wonder if the second wave of bounties is White March Part 2 bounties that maybe take place in the same area. Maybe White March Part 2 in general takes place in the same area, but maybe it's tuned for that difficulty of like when you're doing those parts of the story. Hard to say.
Right here.
Not seeing much of a reaction to this device. Figure we gotta just keep poking around and see what we can find.
Yeah.
At least you made it here in one piece. Fiera lost her wagon and crew.
You look like you've been in the wilds. You see my wagon out there?
I found your goods.
You've saved my hide. I can't thank you enough, but I hope you'll take this.
Fair enough. I'll take my reward then.
Here, as promised. Thanks again. With a little luck, I'll trade these blizzards in for a sea breeze soon enough.
Yeah.
Good old experience progress. Yeah, here's a density of people. Any of them might be who I'm looking for. Whoa! I earned 1,000? I think that's a record. Or at least it's a really good ratio one way or another. That I earned 1,000 and only lost 100 to bandits. Ah, it's our ogre slaying friend. Have they crowned you king of Stalwart yet? My friend doesn't mean to be an ass, sir. It just comes natural. We can read their souls. For Andrid. A handful of memories dart across your mind like startled fish, leaving indistinct images and sounds in their wake. For a moment you were overwhelmed until one particular recollection tugs at your senses with stubborn force. You, or Andrid, or both, kneel on a stone floor, held between two men. The man pacing in front of you wears the armor of a crucible knight, and you feel Andrid's half-hearted contempt for him as if it were your own. You feel Andrid's triumph, too, when the knight comes just close enough for you to spit blood onto his boots. The memory slips away from you, and you find yourself back in your own shoes. Brief memory. Fifth one? The whiff of salt and brine is in your nostrils before the room has even faded. The ground heaves beneath your feet, and a spray of ocean water roars over the railing as the ship heels under the wind. The ship shudders violently, and you are thrown against the railing. In that moment, you find your gaze pulled to the pitching surface of the dark sea, and you see there an eye, broad as a shield, gazing back at you in turn. Fear and fascination sweep through your mind, even as your senses recede and the memory fades. Very brief memories. Just enough to confirm that they're probably not the right person.
Oh, it's you. I'm so glad you came by. I hoped I'd have the chance to thank you properly. They told me what happened. God's bless you, sir. I owe you my life. I know it was foolish of me to run in there, but this ring is all that I have of my family.
How are you holding up?
Oh, I'm managing. Fenway's letting me stay with her until I'm back on my feet. Everyone's been lovely, really. It was hard seeing what's left of the house. But Rayvald says he's going to see a hut raised for me soon as they get the logs.
What's so special about this ring, anyway?
Sentiment, mostly. When he first settled here, my grandfather had a ring fashioned from the first batch of ore he excavated. It was supposed to commemorate his fresh start. He passed it on to his daughter, and my mother gave it to me in turn.
Farewell. Don't care about that guy's booze problem, so not interested. No pilfering from the ovens. Judgy.
Back to warm your hands, eh? What can I do for you?
Do you know a man named Harmke?
The woodcutter? Sure do. Head west from the village, then go north. If you see the frozen stream, you've gone too far.
Oh, it's outside of the village.
Usually works a stand of trees out in the russet wood, though he steps out from time to time.
Well, what are we waiting for?
The only way to be free of revenge is to never pursue it. Turn the other way and never look back.
You see a room, dark and damp. A cellar. It looks like part of the inn rather than an old fortress. Through Haefric's eyes, you admire rows of gleaming bottles, recently dusted and polished. As you step back from the shelves, you look on with satisfaction at a pressure plate concealed in the stone floor.
You all right? I won't serve you if you're already drunk, you know.
He squints at you. Old miser keeps the best stuff in the cellar, so I hear.
Nothing like a pint to take the chill off.
But as per usual, I'm actually just trying to clear out. I've got so much garbage to throw away. Usually going a little fast and loose with the whole thing. It's how we get paid, after all. Pretty much the primary way we get paid. Just the sheer number of items you get from these kinds of exchanges. The question is, do I want to buy camping supplies, or do I just want to let more come in naturally?
Very well.
There we go. Just deal with this real quick. So one thing I want to do is just deal with the fact that I have so many books that I can't keep track of because I've left them on other characters, then switched them out.
What can I do for?
Safe travels.
Sorry if you're getting all excited about like, are we gonna play with that character now? But my priority is actually currently just to deal with the fact that I've got so many books and I haven't been reading enough of them lately, in part because they've been stuck on the wrong characters. There we go. I might be a little more thorough in the future and filter more of them out. But one of my main goals is just to make sure that I'm gonna try to put all my books on the characters that are usually in the party. So from here on out, I'm gonna try to mostly keep them in Adair, Yaskier, and Durance's inventory. Just an attempt to keep track of these little bastards. Saints War Part 1 and 2. Deerwood 1, 2, 4. Still makes me sad. Adamant Hadrid Part 2. I definitely don't need that in two different people's inventories. How that goes, huh? A deer customs, a deer customs. Eh. This is how you get these things all mixed up. Anyway, we'll at least be getting back to our episodic readings again. Let's see. I do like having my melee characters up front. There we go. Back to having an order that makes sense. Alright, back to looking around. I think I already gave you a go.
What can I do for you?
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
Kind of a roundabout way of activating a system. Would have come as a bit of a surprise if like a random person, like a child, for example, was just the person that was the target, and they just like rename into being a named character all of a sudden. I don't know if the engine even supports that kind of stuff.
Something I can do for you? Halfrick's got me straightening the rooms, but I'll help you if I can.
You feel Owena's essence and almost instantly find yourself wrapped in darkness. It takes you a moment to realize that you've plunged into a very old memory. Ah. But as your eyes adjust to the torchlight, you find yourself standing in a gloomy tunnel that you instantly recognize as part of Durgan's battery. A handful of figures in patchy cloaks and hoods, dwarves like you, hunch over a minecart. They're loading it with cloth-wrapped bundles from which you see the occasional flash of metal, the edge of a blade, or the burnished glow of plate. The other dwarves scurry with a curious mixture of haste and caution. They stack the bundles in a din of muted clangs and thumps, following the echoes of their ruckus down the tunnel with nervous eyes.
Pay attention. Sooner we get this done, sooner we can go.
Your voice is a dry whisper, and your nerves tingle with energy. You feel the same apprehension that the others do, but unlike them, you relish it. Still, you look over your shoulder, just in case.
We're hurrying, Captain Gregor. Honest.
When you turn back, the others have redoubled their efforts, and you feel a pleasurable twist in your gut as they fill the cart. Being captain of the guard doesn't pay much, but it does allow you to visit the armory without raising eyebrows. And with the coin master Zoltan selling off half of the battery's arsenal, who's going to notice a few more missing pieces? Besides, you've got a buyer lined up, as long as you can move these goods out of the battery before someone squeals. As you surface from the memory, you realize that an awakening will be permanent for Owena. There may be others in the town you could awaken instead. You look up to find Owena staring at you.
Sir? Excuse me, sir. You all right?
Her head is cocked and her brow is furrowed. Farewell. New detail. They're saying there may be more than one person in town that can be awakened. The implication would be that there's like a judgment call that can be made of who deserves to be awakened. If there's somebody that you deem less worthy of their sanity, I guess. It's pretty dark shit. Not a happy thought. For a moment, your senses are overwhelmed. There are fumbling hands at your belt, and your own low laughter in your ears. Your shoulder is jammed up against the cabinet, and it rattles every time Birthwin leans down to kiss you. There's a sedate pleasure to the memory, but nothing in it has much to do with the battery. Odd place for a game. Is it? Havok doesn't like me making a ruckus upstairs, so I get the cellar to myself, provided I don't go digging into his stores. It's a fair bargain, right, lads? We have our fun.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a bunch of randos. Yeah, I've never noticed anything whenever I use that. I suppose I could try using it on the maid, just to see what it looks like, because I've never seen it work.
Right here.
Little subtle. Just some extra particles fly around her. I could almost miss that in the chaos of trying to scan half a dozen characters to see if they're reacting or not.
Right here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of bummed out that your dialogue choice is just to awaken her. It's like, you realize this will be permanent. There might be other ones. Then your choice is just awaken her or leave.
Right.
It seems like the game refuses the concept of consent, which is kind of a bummer. Like, what if there was a character that actually was willing to take on this burden for the sake of her town? That doesn't seem to be part of the equation. It's just, you inflict this upon somebody, and maybe they react to it differently from person to person or something, but like, why can't you ask them?
Please, tell me you found it.
Yep. No reading your soul. I don't know. I just find that kind of both disappointing and also kind of creepy. Like the kind of person that makes me when I make that choice. When I'm not given the choice to actually have them consent. That's why I was kind of hoping for the outcome of finding out, oh, the mayor is the person who I can awaken. Well, will you take this on like you have before? And we could talk about it?
Got to speak up? My hearing ain't what it was.
You feel her essence humming and buzzing. Another personality, instead of memories, lies dormant within her soul, convulsing as if in fitful sleep. The contours of that dormant soul are sharp, ragged. As you reach out for it, it seizes you violently. You're standing in a darkened feast hall. Sturdy tables and benches have been stacked against the door in the far end of the room. You know it won't be enough. A few dozen other dwarves from your tunneling crew wait with you, shovels and pickaxes in their shaking hands.
Sinove, please. If we go now, we can get behind the barricade. We won't do any good here.
He's right. And you hear agreement in the quiet murmur of the others. But Arms Warden Maroon ordered you to hold your ground here. Yet in those rising whispers, you hear the opening bars of mutiny. You've never tolerated insubordination from your crew, and you aren't about to start. So, you heft your pickaxe and swing it into the man's skull. He collapses and the others fall silent. The acrid odor of urine rises from his body.
We're gonna go down fighting. Anyone who feels differently can settle it with me right now.
Your voice is hoarse from the hours of shouting orders, but no one else moves. They cast their eyes down in the flickering torchlight. Something thuds against the door. The others raise their weapons, picks, shovels, and a few swords, but they don't dare flinch. Your own pulse pounds at your temples. You pull back from Tayana's soul, but you feel Zenova's wrath and ferocity tugging at you still. Her essence thrashes, lashing out at an unseen enemy. Zenova is powerful but dangerous too. Her fury has anchored her to old and threatening memories. Tayana, however, seems unaware of any of this, as she blinks back at you with cloudy, placid eyes. Oh boy. Now we're opening up the idea of potentially awakening somebody who's dangerous. With a character like that's like, speak up, dearie. You might be thinking, oh, well, they're older, like much older.
Caroc, you remind me of an old lover of mine.
Is it my violent urges or my heart of brass?
It's your hands. Oh, Esma's were lovely, but always so cold. Killed the mood, if you know what I mean.
Like you might have been thinking, oh, they're old. If I am ruining somebody's life, I'm ruining less of this person's life, I suppose. It's the kind of gambit people come up with in these situations. I think of the movie The Circle, when they were dealing with the inevitability of sacrifice, and how one might try to get rid of the older people first. But really, it's usually just people selfishly trying to carve up the number of people and finding categories that are not themselves where they can justify on some level separating them and as a lesser. But in this case, they make the choice more complicated by having the older person be maybe the more dangerous choice. Maybe the most dangerous choice.
What are you doing here?
Speaking to you. He's speaking to you, but his furious stare is fixed on the Devil of Caroc. As you reach for Grin's essence, you find yourself wrapped in the cold embrace of a snowstorm. You trudge through the snow, each step laborious to your numb feet. You keep your head down against the wind, and your back is bent under a heavy burden. Ahead of you is the frozen lake, and the hole you made in it. Your feet crunch over the ice. You wait, and secretly hope for the telltale crack beneath you. With the village distant and dark behind you, you would sink, and none would know. At least that would free you of the heavy, churning gut feeling in your gut. Yet when you reach the hole, the ice is still steady under you. You have the burdens off of your shoulders, cradling her in your arms. She's wrapped in nets and weighted with stones. You wish one of the priests of Andra were here, with solemn words and the assurance of ceremony. Instead, you slip a bracelet off of her wrist. Andra will have her body, and you will carry this reminder. You slide the bundle into the water and watch it sink. As it dwindles to nothing more than a dark stain beneath the ice, you feel a scratching in your throat and hear the wind moaning into your ear.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It takes you a moment to realize you're hearing your own voice muttering. You surface from the vision. Whatever it is has nothing to do with Durgan's battery. Seems like it might be an explanation of his drug habit. Unless he caused their death somehow. I don't know. Sounds like they probably had a child that died. And they put them in the hole in the lake as a burial.
Been running it 4 decades now. I reckon I can tell you what you want to know.
I hear your sister was once in charge here.
Arda was a saint. Lived to look after the village, she did. Fell through a weak spot in the lake ice.
Oh. I think he killed her and then hid her body in the lake. I don't think this was any kind of shared experience or a shared cultural thing. That's probably why he said that he wished somebody from Ondra was there. Was because he couldn't bring somebody like that along because it was him hiding the body. That's probably why he secretly wished that the lake would just devour him because of his shame. His gaze grows distant and he scratches at his salt and pepper beard.
You'll pardon me, but it's not something I much care to dwell on.
Huh. I'm not capable of pushing him on what I know.
Need anything else?
I spoke to Galvino. He mentioned something about you.
Bet he did. He despised Stowart when he lived among us, and all the more when we gave him the boot. Never knew the old man to stay silent, that's for sure.
He wrinkles his nose, scowling at some old memory. That sounds like him. I'm sure it wasn't important.
When a man's full of that many words, some of them are bound to be nonsense.
I could push him about the ripple sponge thing, but if I do choose to go after him for it, telling him in advance means he'll just hide his stash elsewhere and move it, and then I'd lose my only piece of evidence. But I don't know if I'm going to do it anyway. But he does seem like he may have killed his sister. Definitely not intentionally. Either he was drunk, or some other mistake or accident happened, or he meant to do it for a moment, but regretted it, regretted it afterwards and wouldn't have done it if he had thought about it. One of those, like, what do you call it? I don't know, heat of passion crimes sort of thing. Big angry moment that doesn't completely match a normal thought pattern, but it's still, you're the one that's ultimately at fault. Alright, let's close out. The fangs. As I have stated, not much is known about this group by the world at large because they don't welcome outsiders into their number. While many believe they are xenophobic and openly hostile to all who enter Ire Glanfath, the truth doesn't seem to be as broad or deadly, and certainly not that simple. There are many places in Ire Glanfath that could be called magical, or sacred to the Glanfathans. One legend states that the Ingwithans, who had suddenly abandoned their kingdom and left for places unknown, took the time to guide the ancient Glanfathan tribes into the now vacant land. The Glanfathans were gifted with the fertile area as their new homeland, but in return for being given such a gift, an oath was required. The Glanfathans were instructed to protect within ruins until such time as they could return to reclaim the ruins. They were required to swear that no living person, including the Glanfathans themselves, would be permitted to entrance into the ruins. Differing accounts suggest that the Glanfathans were promised more than a homeland, that the Ingwithans were the favored people of the gods, and that keeping their oaths would confer similar benefits to the Glanfathans in the end. Oddly, the rules do not seem to apply as strictly when the borders of Twin Elms, a site built upon a large concentration of Ingwithan structures, but it would seem that this is unlikely. That seems, I don't know, it seems strangely phrased. But it would seem that this is unlikely a selective oversight on the part of the Glanfathans, and more probably part of the terms of the original compact. In any case, the Glanfathans came to take their role as guardians seriously, revering the sites and developing rituals designed to protect and guard the ruins. Over time, these rituals became rote formality to some, as much legend and superstition as any other stories passed down, This is not to say the Glenfathan ceased all attempts to uphold their oath. See the section about the 10-year treatises in my book about Admeth Hadret. But the intense devotion to the oath tended to vary from tribe to tribe and clan to clan. Not so with the Fangs, however. The Fangs are a group joined not by ties of kinship or even community, but of belief. Of all the groups of Glenfath, it is the Fangs who seem most intent on keeping their promise their ancestors made to the Ingwithans. Just because their fanaticism and zeal are not as widely sweeping as many think does not make them any less dangerous. The Fangs are not known to reason with those they view as transgressors. They feel you have in any way violated the sanctity of their sacred space, their judgment is swift and exact. Reports of the Fangs' attacks can be found in records dating back to the first colonial explorations of Glenfath, and even the smallest of a perceived slight can be worthy of execution. The order itself seems to consist mainly of hunters. Whether they are recruited as skilled hunters or trained once they gain access to the order is unknown. From all accounts, once they join the Fangs, hunting game falls second behind patrolling Glenfath and protecting the ruins. So it is the author's opinion that it is the former.